How many of you resolved to acquire a new skill in 2020? How many of you decided to make the best out of this year of forced confinement by learning a new language? And how many of you chose Italian? Now, how many of you haven't made much progress or abandoned the resolution altogether? Be honest. This year is coming to an end, and lots of us are already thinking about how to get the next one off to a good start. A few days ago, I was thinking about how to help the largest possible number of people, not just those that I directly work with, stick to their goals this time and make significant progress in their Italian language journey. So I took it to Facebook, I introduced myself as a native Italian speaker and a language coach, and I asked one simple question: what's hard about Italian? What do you find difficult about the language? Within a couple of hours, I had received more than 300 responses, and it was exciting and overwhelming at the same time. Something that became evident as soon as I started looking through those responses and those comments is the fact that there is no one univocal thing that people find difficult about the Italian language. And this is great news. Why, you ask? Because if there is no one thing that is difficult in absolute terms about Italian, it means that you can conquer any aspect of the language. As I like to say, if one can, anyone can. Another thing that became evident is that I cannot possibly answer all of your questions in one sitting. So here is what I'm going to do. Today, I'll talk about how to learn languages, the Italian language in general, its sound system, pronunciation, and the importance of speaking from day one. In the next episodes, I will answer all of the other questions and I will introduce my unique S.O.A.P method. Before we dive into today's Q&A session though, I feel like I should address a couple of very common misconceptions around language learning. Here we go. Number one, it is never too late to learn a language. You are never going to be too old. On the contrary, you will be happy to know that adults make faster progress than children when learning languages. Number two, there is no such a thing as not being talented, not having a gift for languages. The so-called language gene that a lot of people talk about, well, it was distributed democratically at birth. And the proof of the fact that you have it too is that without it, you will not be able to speak any language. But you do, right? The third misconception is that learning languages require time. Actually, it requires practice and repetition. And with the right approach and the right resources, anyone will be able to become fluent in a language in a matter of months instead of years. So what is the best approach? What is the right way of learning languages, you might ask? Well, one thing to be said is that there is no one right way to go about it. There is the right way for you. It is very personal. So the right way is the way that keeps you coming back to learn more, that keeps you excited. I'll give you an example. I love reading. So for me, to open a book in my target language is really thrilling. It's something that I enjoy doing. Some other people do not care much for books. They don't want to read, and I will never force them to pick that as a way to foster their language progress. Maybe they're more interested in listening to podcasts or watching movies with subtitles. Whatever works for you is the right way for you. So as we said, there is no right or wrong way in absolute terms to learn a language. There is, though, a right environment to learn your language in. And the right environment is a supportive environment. I cannot tell you how many people told me in the past few days that they were stunted in their language journey by a teacher that was too strict, by people that told them, oh, your pronunciation is terrible, you should shut your mouth, it's painful to hear. Those are not supportive messages. This is not even constructive criticism, because I could tell you, well, you could clean up your pronunciation here or focus on this or that. This is constructive criticism. It is supportive. Negative criticism does not create a supportive environment, and who wants to learn that way? So if by any chance you're working with someone that does not make you love the language, a teacher, a tutor, a coach, if you're surrounded by friends who speak Italian, but they're making fun of you, maybe because you have that way of interacting with each other, but when they make fun of your pronunciation in Italian, the only thing you want to do is just shut down and stop speaking it. That's not a supportive environment. They might be amazing friends. They're not your ideal group of people to practice your Italian with. So my recommendation will be to find people that can support you, people that can bring even more joy to learning Italian and the process of learning it. Finding the right coach or the right teacher is absolutely paramount, because that person will influence the way that you will see the language. If that person is not a good match, personality-wise or teaching style-wise, it's not going to be a great way for you to go about learning Italian. So do yourself a favor, do some research out there, try maybe having a lesson here, a lesson there. I personally offer a free consultation session. So that's just a way to get to know each other in a sense and see if there is that kind of chemistry. When you decide to work with someone, make sure that you're comfortable being around that person, that you are looking forward to see that person every week or every other week. You have to be happy about learning the language, about interacting with the person who's helping you, or any other conversation buddy, any other language partner that you will find along the way. That's absolutely number one. Now, once you figure out how to learn and how it works best for you, and you can ask for help, I am a coach. I will be happy to help you find a way that is custom made and fits you perfectly. So once you have that down, now you want to focus on the language. Which language though? A lot of people pointed out that in Italy, lots of languages are spoken, and it is true. Those are called dialects. So dialects are regional languages, the languages spoken in different areas of the country, of the Italian country. If I'm not mistaken, there's more than 30. But the Italian, standard Italian, is the common language. If you learn that, you will be able to be understood and communicate with virtually anyone who lives in Italy. The only exception will be for very old people who didn't really have the chance to go to school much, maybe only for a couple of years when they were very young, and now they're in their 80s or 90s, and they are most likely just speaking dialect with their friends, family members. So that will be the only issue. But if you're just visiting, if you're a tourist, or if you're moving to Italy but in a big city, don't worry, you don't need to learn dialects. You might decide to dive into a specific dialect if you move to a specific region of Italy and you're curious. That will be a different story though, because dialects are separate languages. They have their own vocabulary, their own set of rules when it comes to grammar. I personally do not understand many dialects. Some of them are so far out there. There are, as I said, completely different languages. So stick to Italian, standard Italian for now. Oh, now that I'm thinking about it though, maybe some of you are getting confused between dialects and accents. So you might have heard people speaking in proper Italian, standard Italian, but with a strong accent, an accent that is so thick that you can barely understand their words. I am from Milano, for example. I do not personally have a thick Milano-style accent because I took a couple of years of theater and I quote-unquote clean my pronunciation. So if you watch past videos of mine, you will notice that my enunciation is pretty clear. People that study with me then go to Italy and are kind of shocked, like, oh my gosh, I went to Rome or Naples or Sicily and their Italian is so different. It's okay, it's not a big deal. It will just take you a couple of minutes to get into their musicality, to learn how to distinguish their sound system and how they pronounce words. It's not the end of the world. The language, the underlying language though, is the same. So some people told me, I'm learning Italian as an adult and I don't hear all the subtle differences. I don't hear all the sounds. What do I do? Okay, let me share something with you. When you approach a new language, you have to get into its sound system. You have to expose yourself to the sounds of the language, get used to the way it is spoken, acquire the musicality and being able to reproduce it. It takes some time. Just to give you an example, when I moved to the United States, It was years after I started learning English in school. So I had had some exposure to the grammar, but not really to the way that the language was actually spoken. And American English is different from British English or Australian English, right? When I came here, I could not distinguish, for the life of me, between the two words solid and salad. They exactly sounded the same to me. After a year or two, I got used to the different sounds and I was able to distinguish between the vowels. One thing to be said about the Italian vowel system is that we only have 7 sounds. In English, there are 20 different vowel sounds. So all this to say that you will become able to hear more sounds. Another problem that was brought up is the musicality and the rhythm of the language, knowing where to place an accent on words. There are rules for that. I think it's kind of boring to start learning a language by sitting down, opening a grammar book, or looking, Googling, looking on internet about the rules of where to place accents in Italian. Oh gosh, if you are really passionate about it and that's something that you enjoy, go ahead and do it. As I said before, there is no right or wrong way to go about learning languages. For the majority of people that I interact with, though, that will be so boring that will just squash your motivation right away. So a better way to go about it is really just to train your ear, as I said, by listening to podcasts, maybe buy an audiobook in Italian so that you can see the words as they're written and pronounced as you're hearing them. You can watch YouTube videos, you can watch movies, train your ear just by listening. It doesn't even matter if you don't understand. Actually, at the beginning, I would say, who cares? Just enjoy the musicality of the language. How many people say that when Italians speak, it sounds like they're singing? Yes, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful language. Come on, let's be honest. So enjoy the musicality of the language. Try to listen to sentences. Even if you don't distinguish where a word ends and the other one begins, it doesn't matter. Just expose yourself to the musicality, that up and down that we do when we speak Italian, and maybe try to replicate those sounds. But don't worry about understanding at first. Just enjoy. It's almost like when we're kids and we listen to a song at the radio over and over again. We love it. We love the music and the melody. We don't even understand the words, especially if it's a song in a different language, but we start singing, we start pretending. Even if we don't know the words, we're going to make them up just to match the sounds that we're hearing. Yeah, do the same thing, just have fun. Go out there and have fun with the language. Now that we're talking about the sounds of this language, the Italian sounds, how to pronounce words properly, 2 sounds specifically were brought up as sounds that really trip people, English speakers. The sound y, spelled with a GL, y, and the sound r. So the Italian R is strong and is difficult for English speakers to pronounce. It will come with time. Maybe it will never come for you, but it's not a big deal because people will understand. If you say forte instead of forte, I understand the word. I understand that you're trying to pronounce an R there. That is not going to stop me and prevent me from understanding what you're saying. So you will be able to pass the message, to communicate to the other person whatever you want to say. It's not a big deal if you cannot pronounce that R right away. Not a big deal at all. Don't stress about it. It will come with time. You can keep practicing because you need to strengthen your tongue to be able to sustain that sound for that long. So practice behind closed doors, but then when you're out there having conversations, don't worry. That's not something that will prevent the other person from understanding you. Same thing for the sound y that you find in the nice article gli spaghetti, gli gnocchi, or inside of words, foglio, which is a sheet of paper, or foglia, which is a leaf. It really sounds like I'm saying, go out there and speak however you see fit. Not exactly. If you have to choose where to focus on, especially at the beginning, is to enunciate vowels very clearly. Rather than consonants, vowels are what going to make it or break it in terms of the meaning of a word. I'll give you an example. If I say a caso, I don't pronounce a final vowel clearly. It could be a casa or a caso. If I just say a casa and I don't really stick to it until the end of the word, for Italians it's super important to pronounce those vowels at the end of words. You have to push until the word is over before you just relax. So a casa, a caso, those are two separate things. If I say a casa, I'm saying at home, such as in voglio stare a casa stasera. I want to stay at home tonight. If I say a caso, that means randomly. So you see how the last vowel really changes the meaning, and that's why I'm saying focus on vowels more than consonants right now. If you want to clean your pronunciation, make sure that you're pronouncing those vowels all the way. If you were to say a casa, pronouncing the S in a different way instead of a casa, that will not be a big deal at all. The meaning will be the same. I will understand it. But as I said, if you don't pronounce the final vowel, that will create confusion. Now you might say, okay, this is great. How am I going to practice this? First of all, you don't need another person to practice. Don't get me wrong, it's ideal also to find someone to talk with. But at the beginning, if you just want to talk out loud, record yourself and then listen again to make sure that you're absolutely objective in a way that you evaluate if you did a good job or not, repeating certain sounds, go ahead and do it. I also encourage people to have shower talks. So when no one can hear us, even if you live with other people, under the shower, the water is running, no one can really hear you, you can practice your Italian there. And another thing that I would recommend is to replace the inner monologue that all of us have, always constantly going on. So replace English with Italian as much as you can. At the beginning, you might only be able to replace one or two short sentences or just a few words here and there in Italian. So you're telling yourself a story or you're commenting on something in English, and then you will replace a few words in Italian because you know those words in Italian. This is practice. The concept is that whatever comes in needs to get out. So don't only focus on input when it comes to language learning, focus also on output. A 50-50 will be ideal. So if you spend 20 minutes or half an hour listening to something or reading, all this is input. It's kind of passive. Then try to spend an equal amount of time on practicing and getting those stuff out and repeating words and sentences or creating your own. Why is output so important? And by the way, output could be writing too. So if for any reason writing in Italian, being able to write in Italian is important to you, maybe for your job, don't skip it. But if you're only learning to be able to communicate with Italian, going on vacation there, and surviving with the language, and probably you will never really need to write it, don't worry about writing right now. Eliminate that and focus on output in sense of speaking. Why is output so important? It's because some people told me, I understand Italian, almost everything, I just cannot speak. Or when I try to speak, the words do not come easily, I cannot remember. That's because you stored a lot of these words and expressions in your passive vocabulary. Therefore, if I speak in Italian, if you read a book, you recognize the words and you understand their meaning. But if you never spoke, if you never used them actively, the words are stored in your passive vocabulary box. They need to move into the active vocabulary. And the way you do it is by using them. And it's not going to be pretty at the beginning. Let me be honest with you. We are supposed to be making mistakes in order to correct them and then improve. It's absolutely normal. Hence, if you want to start talking with yourself, that's great. At some point though, you will need to find someone to talk Italian with. either a real Italian or someone else who is learning Italian. And this raises the next point. Lots of people told me I cannot find someone to speak in Italian with, or I don't know where to find them. Good thing about being in this century, in 2020 now, is the fact that you can just look on internet. You can find people on social media. That's how I found my Spanish language buddy. So when I decided at the beginning of the year to improve my Spanish, I just reached out to a friend who randomly made a comment about the fact that she wanted to improve her Spanish this year too. And I just reached out to her, hey, let's become language buddies. Let's keep each other accountable. Once a week, we're going to speak. And that is also fostering our friendship on the side. So this is nice. And it's giving us a chance to practice. Now, you can do the same thing with Italian. You can find someone else who's trying to learn Italian. Ideally, being kind of at the same level helps so that no one person will be bored. You don't want to find a teacher. Unless you're paying someone to help you with your Italian, if you're using a friend is not a teacher. So it needs to be a pleasurable experience for both of them. For both of you. You can also find on websites such as conversationexchange.com, you can find people that are native Italian speakers and they're trying to learn English. And you could help them learn or perfect their English as they help you with your Italian. So the way it works is that you will set up, like a Zoom conversation where you decide that for half an hour, you're only going to speak in Italian, for half an hour, you're only going to speak in English. And that's going to be the rule. Now, this brings me to our next point. A lot of you told me how you feel defeated when you finally try to have a conversation with a native, real Italian, and they start speaking so fast, you don't understand, you're just feeling lost, feeling like a failure. Oh, I thought that my Italian was better than this. And then what you do, you switch back to English. So that's really a defense mechanism and it's not going to help you. You're not going to go anywhere, especially if the other person understands English, because that's going to become the comfortable language, the language of choice between you two. For example, I told you before, look on Conversation Exchange. Maybe you will find someone who wants to learn English. It's easy to find someone who wants to learn English nowadays. And as soon as you don't know the word in Italian, you're having trouble, you don't seem to be able to communicate, to get the point across, the other person seems to be a bit puzzled, don't switch to English. This needs to be a really rigid rule. You need to have that as a ground rule. So if I am not able to communicate and express myself clearly to you, I am not going to switch to English. I am going to play charades, for real. If you cannot get the point across, instead of saying, oh, how do you say that in Italian, and giving them the English word, it's better to play charades and help the other person understand what you're trying to say. I know, based on first-hand experience, how uncomfortable this could be. I absolutely know how frustrating this could be because you're a grown-up, you're an adult, and you're capable of expressing yourself to the higher level in your own language, and now you're becoming almost a toddler again, not being able to communicate. It is frustrating. So being uncomfortable and frustrated, though, is a good thing, and I'll tell you why. Every time we want to reach a goal, every time we want to do something new that we never did before, we will have to grow. We will have to become the person who can do that certain thing. The way it works is that almost like a step ladder. Imagine that you're here at this level and you're saying, I want to be able to ask for directions in Italian, right? And that level is here. I don't have all the vocabulary, I don't have the confidence yet, I don't have the grammatical structure to be able to be here already. By the way, a goal cannot be at the same level where you're at. It needs to be something that you never did, otherwise it's not a goal. It will be a repetition of something else that you already did in the past. So here you are, This is your goal. What do you need to do? What do you need to learn? How far of your comfort zone you need to push yourself to rise to the occasion and become the person who is capable of asking for directions in Italian. This is just a simple example. So every time you feel that discomfort, that's great news. It means that you're growing. There is no growth without that feeling of discomfort, without stepping out of our comfort zone. Hence, the best thing you could do in language learning and in life in general is just getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. Make this your personal motto. Another point that almost everyone raised, and you guys are right, Italians speak fast, and it's impossible to understand them. So Italian speaks fast, that's true. Is it impossible to understand them? Well, not in absolute terms, but for you right now, it feels that way. One thing that you can do is always ask them to repeat. There is no shame in that. Puoi ripetere, per favore? Can you repeat, please, if you're talking to someone that you're friendly with? Or può ripetere, per favore, if you want to use a formal way of addressing someone. So yes, you can always ask them to repeat. And then do not stress too much about the fact that you cannot understand everything. Do not get stuck on the word that you do not understand, losing the rest of the conversation. Oftentimes what we do, and what I saw people have the tendency of doing, is that they follow along. Yeah, I understand this, and that. Oh, what is this word? And they just trip and fall on the word that they don't know, and they miss the entire context. So rather than doing that, focus on the words that you do know, and then get your hint from the tone of voice, the surroundings, context in general. It's okay if you don't know all the words. Even to this day, after 7 years of living in the US, sometimes I don't know every single word, and it's okay. I'm learning new words, but I understand what comes around those new words, so I kind of get my hint through those words that I already know, through context, the way that the new word is used. And if I'm not 100% sure, I will ask that person, what does it mean? Cosa vuol dire? That could be a way to ask what does it mean in Italian. Cosa vuol dire? This is our time for today. As I mentioned earlier, in the next video, I'm going to answer more of your questions. I will talk about the importance of speaking and verbs, idioms, prepositions, memorization, and the impact that the language or languages that you already speak have on your Italian. So do whatever you need to do not to miss the next episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel and make sure to press the bell icon. Or you can give me your email address and I'll make sure to send you a personal message with the link to the next video as soon as I will release it. Oh yeah, and don't forget to leave a comment and ask any questions you might have. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you here again next time. Ciao, a presto!